Welcome back. So we are going for a sewage treatment. I will start with a video. You have already seen this fellow's video on water treatment. Okay. Now you are going to have a video on this wastewater treatment. Okay. Remember the guy who was sucked into one pipe who came out of the other? Yeah, Barry. Here we go.
Have you ever wondered what happens to the water that flows down drains and toilets in your home? Hi, I'm Barry, and today I'm going to show you how wastewater gets treated. The journey begins here in your community. When it rains, snows, or when you wash your car in your driveway, the water runoff is known as stormwater. It flows into these storm drains that you see in your neighborhood streets. Storm drains connect to streams and creeks and eventually lead to Lake Ontario. But something different happens to the water that you use in your home. All the water that goes down drains and toilets in your home is known as wastewater. It's full of food, soap, waste, and more. Wastewater never goes straight into the lake or river. From your basement, wastewater flows into underground pipes that follow the natural slope of the land. So most of the time, wastewater just flows downhill to the wastewater treatment facility. Now let's go see how we treat it. All the wastewater from thousands of homes and buildings across Mississauga, Brampton, and parts of Caledon arrives here. It's collected in 6 big underground pipes directly underneath me. Each pipe is 6 feet in diameter. Now let's go see the first step in wastewater treatment. The wastewater flows through these moving screens. The screens trap materials that should never be flushed down your toilet. Things like plastics, rags, and dental floss. Everything the screens trap ends up on these conveyors. The conveyors bring all the garbage into large bins in the building next door. The garbage from the conveyors is collected here. When these bins are full, trucks take it away to landfill. Next, let's see where the wastewater goes. After the screening, the wastewater travels into underground grit chambers. Each of the chambers is round and spins wastewater, kind of like swirling water in a cup. As it spins, sand and small rocks are separated, moved to the center of the chambers, and are removed. Now that the solid particles and garbage have been removed from the wastewater, it flows into settling tanks like this one. We call these settling tanks because the wastewater is given time to settle. At the top of the tank, scum floats and is made up of grease, fats, and oils. At the bottom of the tank, sludge sinks and is made up of heavier materials, mainly human waste. Over here we have an empty settling tank, so you can see how deep it is. So now we have sunken sludge and floating scum. What happens next? See this large machine across the tank? We call this the bridge, but it doesn't stay in one spot like a regular bridge. The bridge slowly travels the length of the tank. As it moves, it scrapes the sludge along the bottom and skins the scum along the top. It takes 30 minutes for the bridge to travel all the way across the tank. Watch, I'll show you. The sludge and the scum are pushed to the end of the tank where it's collected. The sludge underwater we can't see, but at the surface we can see the scum collecting here. This is a continuous process. The bridge will lift, go back to the far end of the tank, and start over. Now the journey splits in two. First we'll see where the sludge and scum go, then we'll come back and see what happens to the wastewater.
The sludge and the scum from the settling tanks, now referred to as biosolids, are pumped into these machines called centrifuges. A centrifuge spins biosolids super fast, like the spin cycle of a washing machine, and remove excess water. Now getting rid of biosolids, that's where things really heat up. This is one of 4 biosolids incinerators, and it heats up to over 840 degrees Celsius. The biosolids enter the incinerator with the consistency of cake batter. The incinerator then heats up the biosolids until they turn into ash. For every 10 tons of biosolids, we end up with only 1 ton of ash. Now let's go see where the ash ends up. This is a lagoon where the ash is stored. The water is red because of the iron minerals we added to eliminate phosphates. This is just a little ways away from the incinerators over there, so we add water to the ash to make it easier to pump. And that's how biosolids have turned to ash. Let's go back to where our journey split in 2 and find out what happens to wastewater from the settling tanks. With the biosolids removed from the wastewater, something interesting happens. Wastewater flows into these aeration tanks. Aeration is the process of pumping oxygen into water. Do you see all those bubbles? That's the oxygen. Aeration allows good bacteria to eat the sludge that didn't sink and the scum that didn't float from the settling tanks. This process is what makes wastewater clear, but it's not clean yet. These are the clarifying tanks. Remember the good bacteria that ate everything to make the water clear? They now sink to the bottom of the tanks and are removed. The water at the top of the tank is now clean and is what we return to Lake Ontario. Along the way, we add chlorine as a final disinfectant. It's now time for us to return the treated wastewater back to Lake Ontario. An underwater pipe stretches just over 2 kilometers out and lies at the bottom of the lake. Before we return the treated wastewater, we remove any excess chlorine. Now let's go take a look at the control room. Here's where we monitor all the processes we talked about today. Operators ensure that water quality standards are always being followed and that operations throughout the facility, like the aeration tanks and incineration, are functioning properly. Lake Ontario is our most important body of water. It is the home to a variety of fish and plant life. It's the source of our drinking water, and as we saw today, where stormwater and treated wastewater ends up. Even though our wastewater goes through an intense treatment process, we want to limit our impact on the environment. We can do this by keeping harmful chemicals like paints, expired medication, and harsh cleaners out of our sinks, drains, and toilets. Let's all do our part to keep Lake Ontario clean and healthy.
So friends, this is what happens in principle in any wastewater treatment system. You have some screens, you have grid chambers, you remove the scum and you have the settling done. Beyond that, here they burnt all the biomass. Depending on the system, they'll have different things. For instance, here he told that the ash pond was red because they added iron to neutralize some of the chemicals which are there. Each locality will have a slightly different need, or in see here they are going to pump it directly into the lake. So they use chlorination and then they send it. They don't do much. But there are other videos which I have which show a little more different ideas. So as we go down this course, you will have different perceptions building into your minds basically. So these are some of the things. And basically, if you found that some language was not clear to you or something, you can go back to your rooms, listen with headphones or something, and you'll be finding that this is the same thing which is going to be repeated everywhere. So basically, what happens is, whatever you put into the drain has to be treated. Now, so you can think what happens for waste from homes. See, one of the things which even I do personally, which I don't know whether it's right or wrong, if food spoils in the fridge, I prefer to go and put it into the toilet. Okay? easiest, most, it doesn't show off to others what you are throwing out. So that's there. And sometimes even I have thrown oil from the after cooking into the toilet, because if you put it into the kitchen sink, it seems to clog. But what is the problem is will happen is this oil is what will form your hydrogen sulfide and other dangerous gases. Okay, so what happened? Yeah. So from offices, if you are using the sewers correctly, you are only going to get your liquid waste and solid waste from the toilets, nothing else. Then commercial establishments are a big pain, especially these hotels. And big hotels, they give a huge quantity of food which they try to pump into the sewers. Okay, I have seen many times in near my house when I was in Adambakam, one particular hotel, he used to dump it all into the sewers. So often that area will have the sewer overflowing, sewer overflow. So now the principle is in many of the places, most of the places, you have to have your own sewage treatment plant if you are having a hotel. Okay, so that's a good idea. Usually what you do is they chop up the food, then they flush it with lot of water into the sewer. But still what happens is you are overloading the sewer. What is food for you is also food for the microbes. That's the problem, nothing else. And again, it can clog. Okay. Industries are a big problem. In case they have some accident, some paint spills or anything, maybe a harmful chemical, easiest way is just sweep it under the drain. Okay, so the problem when these sort of things are done is the sewer system may not be designed for certain harmful wastes. Okay, and certain sewage treatment plants are not designed for handling the chemicals. For instance, if you are using a system which is purely biological in nature, for instance a septic tank only depends on the anaerobic bacteria which is there. You are killing all the anaerobic bacteria, means what happens? So this is the problem. Then institutional facilities are like hotels, mostly we call these things hospitals and schools and colleges. Schools and colleges are also notorious for the quantity of solid waste which is discharged, and hospitals, if they send some of the medical waste, it's very dangerous. Medical waste are very dangerous. In fact, somebody was telling me that CMC has a branch in somewhere another village, and they are dumping all the medical waste into a near a lake, and they are polluting the place. It may be true, and other hospitals are also doing that. So you see, this overloads the system, and chances of breakage of other epidemics is higher. So this is what was there inside your wastewater. If you can think of anything else, yeah, you can tell, because for instance, oils and greases from this car washes are also there. Usually what they do is they keep an oil trap, which will trap the grease and only let the water flow, because oil is lighter, it will automatically float up. But if the grease trap is not maintained properly, all that is again going to go into your sewer only. These cause hydrogen sulfide gas to form, which can even explode. So these are the characteristics, just like your drinking water. These are also going to be, these are only going to be there, just that this is going to be the big brother of the drinking water source. Drinking water treatment plant will also treat all of these characteristics. Sewage also treats all of these characteristics. Maybe in drinking water source, paper, plastic and wood, that is the main thing. I got another interesting video of sewer in Mexico. You can see what all are the things that can get into a sewer. So principles of sewage disposal, these are the principles you have to adopt. You should not allow any harmful chemicals to be there, and then you cannot let microbes grow. Physical pollutants, like you see what is there in that Mexican sewer. It doesn't mean Mexico is only bad. Every country does it, and India is even worse. So in fact, if my slideshow direction is right, I kept a Mexican sewer first, then I show an Indian sewer. Okay, so here we have prevent pollution of bathing and recreational areas. For instance, Chennai is very famous for the river Kuvam. Okay, Kuvam. Usually Tamil, anybody from Tamil Nadu uh, will know Kuvam. Okay, more than the Adaya river which is also there. And when we were in college, there was a little bit of ragging. And our seniors will say, if you cannot say I'm from Chennai or Madras, they say you have to say Kuvam Pattinam. Pattinam means city, so you are coming from the city of Kuvam. So now why do I refer to this? Kuvam discharges near that Anna Samadhi, and sometimes you will find that it is so filthy in the Marina Beach. Okay. In fact, when I went last, I was not at all happy. I didn't get into the water also of Marina. And if you remember, there was the tsunami, right? So you can the satellite image of Chennai Harbour post tsunami and before pre-tsunami is there. You can see a very big difference. I want you to go and have a look at that. Okay. So this is what we mean by the pollution of bathing and recreation areas, in the sense that this Kuvam has discharged into Marina and it's causing a nuisance. Like this, so many other, in fact Kuvam was a recreational river before they made it like this. There were boat houses, even now boat houses are there, and they are trying to bring it back. But it will take a lot of years, because I will not have anything friendly thoughts or nice thoughts about Kuvam, even if it's crystal clear. So then you should also prevent it from looking ugly. Okay, I had a video of how the Ganges, like some place of Ganges was getting dirty, but I didn't bring it into this, but you will understand what I mean. So it's not nice to look at, and it is also unpleasant to the odors. In fact, Kuvam, you can know you are approaching Kuvam from a distance on dry days. Okay. So then we should not let human waste and toxic waste come in contact with any of these things. Man, animals. Animals go grazing into the grass and they can carry the diseases back. Okay. And then plant and wildlife and food chain should not be affected. I told about that biological magnification. Okay, remember that? Small fish eats the planktons absorb the chemicals. This is eaten by fish. Finally, it comes to man also. Okay, so we cannot be playing with the food chain. Then we should prevent fly and mosquito from breeding. That is understood, and we have to adhere to set standards. So these are some of the things which are there for sewage disposal. Now, there are so many types of waste. I am specifically going only for domestic waste. Okay, organics, suspended solids, grease and oil, grit. Grit, if you are washing your house, putting it into the drain, that is how this grit gets into it. Another way is, like in our house, what happens is when water is in the when it rains, the channel, the drain from our house discharges into the open drain directly. So automatically some proportion of sand and grit will go into the sewer. Of course, this is not a sewer in the traditional sense, it's just an open drain. I even don't know where it goes or whether it's getting treated. So basically, to treat domestic waste is very easy. You just have to remove the suspended solids. Okay, so what are the principles you will use for removing suspended solids? Okay. See, I am giving a clue to my question paper now. Maybe it is these things, but please don't think that this is what is there. I am very boldly saying because I know that you will not. I will not be influencing your answer. But this is the principles I want you to know. Okay, if somebody asks you this sort of pollutant is there, very fundamental thing you should know. Screening is there. You can also do gravity sedimentation, and you can do filtration for removing the suspended materials. Okay, so yes, gravity sedimentation also includes your flocculation and coagulation because it is used for enhancing the process. Okay, so please remember, principles are only this. Only this is the principle for removing certain type of solids. There can be other type of things also, like chemicals. You may need to do some water softening. So immediately I was very happy when you told zeolite is, of course, just a membrane. Why are you asking this, sir? It is correct. So basically, all of this is known. So that's why I'm saying, when you go to the question paper, relax. It is the same principle which applies when you go to site. Person says a problem, they say you have done nonsense in your design. If you say, yes, I did nonsense in my design, gone. But if you have confidence that no, that cannot be that bad, and then you have a look at it, you will be able to justify it. So please remember, engineering involves a lot of being cool-headed. And I am starting with my question paper with you. So please read it and then you take a call. It's simple, just like how I put it for you, suspended solids. In fact, I hit this points purposely. Okay, I hit it purposely. I just want you to remember that this is a very simple paper. All are things which you have seen. All are things you have seen. Right from the day you were very small with your mother, you saw what filtration is. You have seen what sedimentation is. You have seen how you have been purifying water. If you know your history, little more will come into your mind. Okay, so I just want to encourage you to please keep an open mind and think of problems. And yes, there's a lot of sludge handling. Sludge handling also, that whatever is your screenings, that also has to be taken care of. If you look at this video also, they had a traveling screen. So I think you have another exposure of a traveling screen. It is again taken by a conveyor belt and then it is handled. Okay. Now, industrial waste are a little different. It depends on the type of industry. It also might require additional treatment. Okay. See, for instance, if you are having a thermal power plant, first step is you have to cool the water. Cooling towers are there because you cannot discharge boiling hot water into the water. Why? Okay. This is the word I want. Dissolved oxygen is going to get reduced. Okay, this is what. Remember the bathroom example which I gave you. When I bathe in hot water, I am going to reduce the dissolved oxygen. Okay. Then sometimes it might be that temperature might be very cold also. So that also you will have to take care of. Then you have to stabilize the waste. Okay, so some waste might be, it might even be unstable, where it can form other harmful chemicals or anything. So you will have to stabilize the waste before you send it. You might equalize the discharge. See, for instance, if you take most of this dyeing and other chemical plants, when one process is being done, one type of waste will go. It might be acidic. Another type of waste. So this might not be continuous. It may not be a continuous process. It might be there for a certain period of time only that a particular waste will be discharged. Probably that process will take 48 hours. And at the end of the process, for 2 hours, they may have to clean and get the waste into the sewer because they can't flush the entire thing. The byproduct is what you are going to take it into the wastewater system. So what they normally do is they go for an equalization basin. What is the equalization basin? They take all the waste. They know that in 2 days time waste will have a consistency which is of treatable nature. Equal amount of acid and bases might have come. Hot water and cold water would have come. So whatever you want to do, it is all come. So if you mix all of this together, it is going to be easy to treat. So this is called an equalization basin. And this is a principle used in industrial wastewater treatment. Then you can also think of the recovery which you can do from the byproducts. For example, even domestic or this one, you get methane, which is nothing but your biogas.
The previous treatment video where they took the solid waste and they filtered it, the sludge, when they took it out, then they dumped it as bio waste or something.
Yes, in this case it was ash. Another thing is they can see, this is just that in that system they were not incorporating it. Okay, you can it might be that on that date people might not have thought of it. When you are going for an expansion project and all that, you can actually think of all of this. You get it? So it's just that every treatment system is different, but if you see the underlying principles are the same. Underlying principles are the same. Okay, so you can recover a lot of byproducts. In fact, plastics which are there floating, you can probably think of something. People are now talking of making it into methane or laying it in the road. So many other things are coming up. So byproduct recovery is an important thing. Now I am going to go for a short video on the domestic sewers. Then we will also see a sewer in Bombay.
They're the bowels of one of the world's largest and most polluted cities, where disease runs rampant and the stench is sickening. Human excrement, toxic waste, rotting cadavers, all flowing right beneath the sidewalk. The sewers of Mexico City are as disgusting as any on earth. But this man, Carlos Barrios, has just given up a comfortable desk job for the opportunity to swim in them. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and Carlos is pulling a dead dog out of the sewer. He's making sure that the wastewater of Mexico City stays where it belongs.
We pull up all the things you can imagine. You can see chairs, cars, all kind of waste. Anything you like is in the drains.
Located in a massive basin, Mexico City is a crowded industrial colossus. Its sewer lines stretch for thousands of miles, some following channels dug by the Aztecs. The sewers are severely overtaxed. Not only must they accommodate runoff from the mountains, but also the waste from the toilets and sinks of 19 million people. The slightest blockage can send sewage flowing into the streets and subways, or worse, into the homes of thousands. At age 45, Carlos decided to leave his job as an accountant to join the team that keeps these sewers flowing.
I have worked for the city about 24 years. When I get bored of the office job, the opportunity came for me to dive, and I took it. It was a great change for me. I changed my life completely.
Back at the base, the team receives an emergency call. The Aculco pumping plant has a mysterious blockage, and it needs to be cleared immediately. Once again, the dirty job falls to Carlos.
Be calm and careful. If anything happens, don't despair. I will be the one to make decisions. We will be very safe. It is Carlos's life, so we will be careful.
Carlos has no idea what to expect. Julio's team alone has hauled out more than a dozen corpses, most of them murder victims. Alone in this dark, claustrophobic environment, Carlos must remain calm and focused. Confusion can mean death. Carlos tries not to think about the soup of bacteria he's swimming in, including tetanus, typhoid, and cholera. His suit protects him, but it isn't armor. A sharp puncture could wreak havoc.
If the suit is cut and you cut our skin also, you have to get to the hospital because of the environment. It's very contaminated.
After a half-hour search, Carlos locates the obstruction.
There's a metallic object. I'm going to touch it to see what it is.
Roger.
The obstruction turns out to be a rusty wheel from an old sewage pump. Once they've located it, the team makes swift work of the problem. It's been a successful mission for Carlos, but before he can undress, he must be washed and scrubbed down with a disinfectant. In his new job, Carlos has found a renewed sense of purpose.
I feel like I'm be someone who makes the people live better.
With infinite amounts of sewage to tend to, Carlos has got plenty to keep him busy in the bowels of Mexico City.
Right, friends. Basically, you saw what all people put into the sewer. Okay, so if you look at his job, it seems very nice. Okay, I don't know. I think you might even guess what I'm going to come up with the next video. This is in Mumbai. Okay, it's much sadder. Okay.
Fuck.
Mumbai is one of the richest cities in India. With its gleaming skyscrapers overlooking the coast, real estate here is among the costliest in the world. But the city's basic services and infrastructure, like garbage collection and maintenance of sewer lines, continues to depend on archaic methods. For thousands of sewer workers, working conditions have remained virtually unchanged for over a century. Armed with little more than a helmet and some coconut oil, these workers enter the manholes to unclog the waste.
डोक्यावरून जे मलमूत्र नेऊन ते त्यांना भंगी म्हणायचे पण आमची परिस्थिती त्यांच्याहीपेक्षा वाईट आहे, कारण का आम्ही ज्यावेळी खाली उतरून काम करत असतो बिल्डिंगच्या कनेक्शनमधून काय पडेल आमच्या डोक्याला सांगू शकतो, कारण काय काय स्लम एरिया आहेत तिकडे डायरेक्ट कनेक्शन आहे PSCचे किंवा सार्वजनिक शौचालयाचे, त्याच्यातनं जे मलम होतं ते डायरेक्ट आमच्या डोक्यावर पडतो. आम्ही वारंवार अधिकाऱ्यांना सांगायचा प्रयत्न केला की तर काहीतरी आम्हाला येऊ देत्या, पण आमच्या ह्याच्याकडे कोण लक्ष देत नाहीये.
Each day, Mumbai generates enough sewage to fill 4,500 Olympic-sized swimming pools.
कारण का माहित आहे, वर्षाच्या 12 महिन्यातून आम्ही एकदाच ती मॅन्युअल भरतो.
Mumbai has more than 50,000 manholes. With each one these workers open, there are potential dangers. Toxic and deadly fumes of methane, nitrogen, ammonia and hydrogen sulfide have been building up over time, generated by a hazardous cocktail of human and industrial waste. Suresh Magar has been a sewer worker since 1987. He always says a small prayer before he enters the manhole.
प्रत्येक असं करतो आम्ही, दरवर्षी असं नंबर आला का फॅन आला का पाळे असले खाली उतरायचे आम्ही असं करतो, गॅस नाही लागत किंवा काही नाही असं करतो.
Before they enter, the workers perform a candle test. If the candle goes out, that means there is little or no oxygen and the worker won't be able to breathe. Not exactly state of the art. And even if the manhole passes the test at first, gases often get trapped within pockets in the sediment and sludge. If a worker disturbs one of these pockets, the gas is released and can cause a sudden loss of consciousness and even death.
तो त्या वायूमुळे ना मला सुरुवातीला मग काम केलं, माझा श्वासोच्छ्वास वाढायला, दम लागायला लागला. दम लागल्यावर मला कल्पना आली म्हणजे गॅस आलाय. असा फावडा मी मारला, त्या फावड्यामध्ये लपलेला गॅस होता, पॉकेट गॅस, तो वर आला आणि मला त्रास. मला म्हणजे दम लागल्यावर डोळ्यावर म्हणजे अंधारी आली. तर मी वरच्याने इंडिकेशन दिलं, बाबा लवकर खेचा मला गॅस लागलाय. तर सगळे घाबरले, वरची धावपळ झाली आणि कसा बसा मला वर घेतलं. मी मॅन्युअलच्या वर आलो आणि रस्त्यावर डायरेक्ट आडवाच झालो. मला 5 ते 10 मिनिटं शुद्धच नव्हती.
Inhalation of toxic gases can also have a serious effect on the long-term health of manhole workers.
टीबी झाला होता. 6 महिने मी काम केलं नाही, कारण मला डॉक्टरने स्ट्रिक्ट वॉर्निंग दिली होती की हे जर काम तुम्ही केलात कंटिन्यू तर तुमच्या जीवाला येऊ शकतो, धोका होऊ शकतो.
And if the fumes don't get you, there are other hazards.
किंवा काही ठिकाणी जसं हॉस्पिटलची कनेक्शन आहेत, तिकडे हॉस्पिटलच्या ऑपरेशनची ब्लेड्स, त्याच्यानंतर हॉस्पिटलच्या सुया किंवा जे मॅटर्निटी होम आहेत.
According to a recent study, about 80% of sewer workers die before the age of 60, and sewer workers' unions report that around 25 workers die every month.
Politicians, the bureaucrats, the policy makers, all of them actually do not have any kind of a first-hand experience as to what kind of agonic life, pathetic life that this kind of people undergo.
A caste-based occupation, sewer workers are among the lowest. They are ostracized from society. Workers say the foul smell they carry makes them the shit people.
Their social status in a given society is the lowest. In villages, their houses are segregated. There is a clear-cut physical segregation.
The stigma is so strong that many workers hide their occupation from family and neighbors.
तर एखादं बदनामीसारखं लोक 4 चौघांना सांगत जातात, अरे तो असे ते घाणीत काम करतो बघ, असा आहे तो. हां, तर आम्ही आमच्या ठिकाणी मी माझ्या कुटुंबाला कल्पना दिलेलीच होती. माझ्या बायकोला सुरुवातीला माहिती नव्हतं.
For a majority of these workers, the need to escape from this reality often results in some form of addiction.
जरूर आता काम दुकानात लागेल, मुकादम साहेब लोक असतात तर ते काम करून देणार होते.
They said they cannot perform this kind of occupation unless they close all their senses.
You may give the devices, you may give the safety gear, you may give the suit or whatever, but you cannot allow, it is a non-negotiable. Because it is an inhuman and it is a caste-based occupation and it is a hazardous and the people are dying.
But given the dynamics of India's caste system,
I'm not going in for the other things because India actually states that we don't have caste system, and it shouldn't happen. But you can understand the difference between what happened in the other case and this one. Okay, and this is the reality of India, and I'm not going to say that this is totally avoidable, because even in Mexico people went into the sewer, and if it so happens, if you're going with the gear, I don't know if suppose it is actually wrong. Okay, because if you look at people, they go into near the nuclear reactor, of course with protective clothing. X-ray is also a harmful thing, but people do work as X-ray technicians with proper clothing. Okay, but there are certain things which we can do to prevent sewers from clogging. That's the next video. But for now, what is it that I want you to learn? What do you learn from this? Okay. No. I'm not talking about the little bit part. What about the drain? What goes into the drain? With respect to treatment, you need to know what comes to you for treatment. So what goes to the treatment plant? Almost everything. Okay. So basically human wastes. Okay, that goes. Then people are also adding this blade and this one, like for instance, forgive my language, some of the condoms and what shall I say, the sanitary needs of women are slightly different, so those things go and affect the drains. In fact, many times cloth, okay, fibrous materials are big villains in a sewer system. In fact, if you remember, I told you that if you shave and keep the shaving has hair, if you shave your beard, you are going to clog your drain. So it can happen on a very large scale also. So on your side, you can start educating people about what to put and what not to put in a drain. I'm running out of time. I'll just let you go for the next video quickly. Oh, I'm sorry, I should turn it on this. Here.
Where does it all go? You just push the lever and it's gone. It's not magic, but it is pretty weird that everything disappears. How does it all work? Can anything go down there? Are there even any rules? And is the sink any different? The bathroom sink, the kitchen sink? Actually, there is no difference. Sink, toilet, same thing. Behind these walls and under these floors, all the drains meet up in a single pipe and head toward the sewers. Take a look at this. No, not that. This. What happens down here is pretty cool. Everything that leaves the house through the main drain pipe meets up with the sewer, right down here. In some places, it's a combined sewer, both wastewater and stormwater. In other words, everything from inside your house and everything from outside your house, rain, whatever, goes into a single combined sewer. All of it heads towards the wastewater treatment plant. In some places, the sewers are separated, one for wastewater and the other for stormwater. In that case, only the wastewater heads towards the wastewater treatment plant. The storm sewer goes straight to the Detroit River, untreated, because it's only water, right? Actually, no, it isn't. All the chemicals that you put on your lawn or the soap with all the phosphates that you wash your car with all head out in the storm sewer if you've got a separated system. Straight into the Detroit River. Some people hook up their downspouts to their main drain so that they can keep water away from their home. The problem is, when you add all that rainwater to the dedicated wastewater sewer line, it can overload the system, and during a heavy rainfall, homes can be flooded. And a portion of the wastewater will have to bypass the wastewater treatment plant because it's overloaded and head straight into the Detroit River. Instead, you can just disconnect your downspout and add a rain barrel. Simple as that. But simply adding a rain barrel isn't enough to protect the system. Let's hear from the experts about some of the other things we should think about.
People put things down the sewer that aren't supposed to be there, for example, oil and grease.
You pour it down your sink and it's liquid. With hot water, you think, it's fine. It's got to go somewhere and it solidifies.
Sewers can get plugged up, which could lead to basement flooding of your own residence or a neighbor's residence. Your toilet or your sink is not a garbage can. Municipal wastewater treatment plants were never designed to treat chemicals that could be in your pharmaceuticals or your personal care products.
Paints, oils, solvents should be in containers and disposed of separately, not down the sink or the toilet.
Pharmaceuticals can go back to the pharmacy.
Flushable wipes for children, for example, physically they are flushable, but they're not in the water long enough to actually degrade, and they do clog the pipes. Sanitary napkins and tampons, women flush down the toilet thinking that's fine, that's what they've always done, but those do clog the sewer systems and cause issues elsewhere.
Products like that should be in the garbage. Food waste, composting, or the garbage is the better way of dealing with items like that.
So, to sum it up, a storm sewer is not a garbage can. Only rain goes into the storm sewer, nothing else. If you pour your bacon grease or cooking oil or anything like that down the sink, it'll most likely end up clogging the sewers on your street because oil and grease become solid quickly. You should let grease cool down, put it in an empty container, and throw it in the trash. Or even better, take it to the Essex-Windsor Solid Waste Authority's public drop-off depot at Central Avenue and EC Row. And speaking of which, that's the same place you should bring motor oil, unused paints, and things like that. Don't dump them in the sewers. The toilet and sink are no place for unused pharmaceuticals. And look for the Eco logo on cleaning and personal care products. If you flush things that shouldn't be flushed, wipes, feminine products, those kind of things, they'll clog sewers. Even if they say flushable, they're not. And when the sewer is blocked, people's homes flood because wastewater has nowhere to go but back up to the house. So, let's heed the experts' advice. We need to think before we clog the sewers, misuse the wastewater treatment plant, or harm the Detroit River. Oh, and speaking of the wastewater treatment plant, I think it's time we take a look and see what goes on down there. All the wastewater from the city of Windsor ends up at one of two wastewater treatment plants. The Little River plant, or in this case, the Lou Romano plant. The purpose of each of these plants is to remove all solids and pathogens, microorganisms like bacteria and stuff, from the wastewater, so when it gets reintroduced to the Detroit River, it's cleaner than when it arrived at the wastewater treatment plant. When it arrives, coarse screens remove large solids, rags, and debris from wastewater and are immediately disposed of. It's here that you see some of the most ridiculous things people have put down their toilets, drains, and sewers. At least this stuff made it this far. Some things that the water can't dissolve end up stuck in the sewers, leading to sewers being clogged and homes being flooded. After this, fine screens are used to remove the smaller material in the same way. Next up is grit removal. Grit includes sand, gravel, and other heavy solid materials that are heavier than the organic solids in the wastewater. Removal of grit happens by getting the wastewater to flow in a spiral pattern. Heavier particles settle at the bottom of the tank, while lighter organic particles are suspended and eventually carried out of the tank. From there, that water is sent into a settling basin. This is where suspended solids settle out and floating scum is removed by skimmers. Scrapers in the tank move continuously along the bottom to deposit the raw sludge into hoppers, which is sent to a nearby plant where it's made into pellets for fertilizer. After the settling basins, the wastewater is sent to the next step by an Archimedes screw pump, which forces the liquid upwards. The revolutions raise the water thread by thread until it comes out at the top of the cylinder. There, it is met by the fine curve screen, where small items that have made it through the initial screening process are removed. Things like fruit and vegetable stickers. They don't dissolve and they clog up the system, so when you're peeling them off, throw them in the garbage, not down the sink. Now it's time to get the stuff you can't see. Some of this work is done by biological aerated filters. Essentially what happens here is that good microorganisms attached to porous rock eat up the bad microorganisms. The wastewater is pumped up through the rocks and the bacteria in the water sticks to the rocks. Bubbles are pumped in to keep the good bacteria alive and working. The clean water goes up and the rocks with the bad bacteria attached to them go back down. This cleansed water then flows into a channel on its way to be treated by ultraviolet light. The water passes high-output UV lamps, where light disrupts the molecular structure of DNA molecules in the microorganisms. This renders the cells unable to replicate before they die. The disinfection stage takes seconds, eliminates the need for chlorine, and makes the final process much safer. At the wastewater treatment plants, more than 90% of the pollutants are removed from the City of Windsor's wastewater before the water is returned to the Detroit River. And that's important because the Detroit River and the surrounding lakes are our primary source of drinking water and so much more.
People cannot live without water. We need water for agriculture, we need water for hygiene, we need water for recreational aspects, we need water for drinking, and we have no substitute for water. It's too easy just to try to pass the blame to somebody else. We're all sharing the same resource and we all have the same responsibility.
Right now, the Detroit River is still considered an area of concern under the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement.
We have to care and protect for the resource that we're using and that we're leaving behind for our generations as well.
So let's recap. Wastewater leaves your house, gets treated at the wastewater treatment plant, and returns here, the Detroit River, the same place your drinking water comes from. And what does this all mean? For the past 8 minutes, we've shown you how our wastewater treatment system works. We've told you why it's important to pay attention to what you put down sinks, toilets, and sewers. But if your mind's been floating elsewhere, here's what you absolutely positively need to know.
Number 1, number 2, and TP. That's it. That's all that goes down there. Oh, and TP? It means toilet paper. Oh yeah, and this? Soap and water. That's it.
Great. So, I think that was very informational. If suppose people are actually doing that, then you are not going to find sewers actually clogging. Much of that work, with dirty work which people are forced to do, will be automatically removed and reduced. Yes. So, I'll close this lecture with a thank you. Please, I might not be able to, I'll not be giving much more of the treatment videos, in the sense that all are just the same. Most of these are so slow, most of them are time-lapse videos. That is, the camera would have been set up just like that and they speeded up the entire process. In fact, the person showed in that first video, the entire took, to make one rotation, it took 30 minutes. So they just made it as a time-lapse so that it comes quickly. So all these processes are not as fast as they showed it, but please go through these videos because the principles which they tell are the same. There was screening, various kind of screening, including a rotor screen was here. And then you had the grit removal, sedimentation. Maybe here there was not much of this coagulation and all that done, but UV was used, and in some cases the previous one chlorine was used. Okay, end of the day, some sterilization has been done, but I don't know if India is actually using sterilization in the final product. We use some activated sludge processes and stuff like that typically. Okay, and thank you for your time.